Thank you, Steve. Is this working? Yes.
It is.
Je vais en français ou en anglais? En français.
Comme vous voulez.
Alors, vous n'avez pas parlé pendant votre...
During your intervention, both interventions, you did not mention the agreement that was recently been discussed, which is the TTIP agreement between Europe and the United States. Is this agreement dead after the election of Donald Trump? And what about free exchange? And is Europe turning its back to this concept, or are we to expect anything better? Thank you. Thank you. I have a question, and I would like to relate two topics that seem separate. Since the debate yesterday, we see a certain fragmentation of societies that we addressed mainly when it comes to the recent elections and also with regards to the political thought. And the question that begs itself is that whether we're talking or whether the regular or conventional opponent could really frame their opinions. This is the question to ask. Also, with regards to something that seems separate. In the neighboring space, we see open-end crises in Sudan and Libya and other similar countries. So the question is, are these two types of fragmentation, or shouldn't these two types of fragmentation raise our fears, because this means that with regards to our political thoughts among Europeans, they did not develop any thoughts with regards to the integration of the European space. And can we say that development policies based or acts around minorities would lead to bridging those fractures or major fractures, for instance, in Benghazi, in Libya, and in Iraq? So if Europe provides 2% to Africa as part of its strategic investments, while 26.7% come from Japan and 27% come from China. Thank you. I would like to congratulate the panel. We in Europe can say that Europe was facing some realities, be it at the economic level, the financial crisis, the freedom of movement with the migration fluxes, the Schengen visa, and the trade agreements with Canada, Brexit. And as a diplomat, I always like to refer back to history. We will be celebrating soon the Rome Treaty, and I know that European countries are trying to come up with a response to that. Can we say that the French and German foreign policy, or as part of this foreign policy, are you preparing a document that looks into where Europe is heading? Thank you.
In the Jalabad, yes, sir. Yes.
Thank you. My name is Abdullah from the Qatar Ministry of Foreign Affairs. You mentioned that Trump's foreign policy is uncertain. And as you can see, Trump wants to improve the relations with Russia. So how do you see a strong American-Russian relationship as an effect on America's relationship with the European Union in the future? Thank you.
That's a very, very good question. And we'll just take one more way in the back and then go back to the panel for brief responses.
Okay, thank you. I have a question concerning the German defense figures. 2% should be the level that is needed for European defense concerning Germany. But behind the 2%, there is some reality. Germany already expends about $34 billion a year, more than France. With 2%, it would go up to $60 billion a year, €60 billion a year. So the consequence, Germany would dominate militarily in the European Union, and the German export rate would also be much higher than it's already now. So would Europe could support it, this kind of situation? Is 2%, is this a good reality, is a good balance? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just to go back and answer what you like, Elizabeth, do you want to begin again? Okay.
D'abord, la question sur le libre-échange. En France, en tout cas au Parlement français, nous sommes pour les traités de libre-échange. Par exemple, nous avons approuvé l'accord avec le Canada, bien qu'il y ait en France aussi pas mal de protestations sur cet accord, mais nous considérons que c'est un bon accord, un accord équilibré.
We consider it to be, with regards to free trade agreement, we are in favor of it in France, and we have finalized it with Canada, though there are protests. And this is a very important question. It, however, seems that for the majority between the white and the left, many parties have initiated negotiations on the North Atlantic Agreement with the United States, and it went in the wrong direction. We have set some red lines with very defensive lines. For instance, the phytosanitary question, also chlor-washed chicken, as well as sanitary security and other offensive measures. Since nothing has changed in our position, we considered or we looked into these agreements in light with these considerations, and this is why the agreement stopped. With regards to the question on the fact that whether parties have been trespassed, I would say yes. We are the members of the parties and the community, and we can always, or we should always further engage civil society. I talked about the Commission on Civilization Dialogue. We have many active people within civil society, and it is very important for people to be aware of decisions that are being made by their leaders. I agree with your observation on the need to see our development, on the need to review our development policies, and with regards to our policies with North Africa or Sub-Saharan Africa. You mentioned the importance of holding investments, for instance, the investments made by Japan or China or even the United States in Africa. We need to ensure solidarity between the North and the South, and it is our duty to embark on this path. However, the situation now is different than the past. We need to look for an equal partnership relation rather than just conduct trade. It's good to do trade, but we are looking for a real equal partner. And we cannot only limit ourselves to consuming what we produce. With regards to the question about the question of Mr. Miguel Moratinos, we fight together to have this vertical approach in Europe. With regards to your question, Mr. Moratinos, we have our different views, but we need to join those views in order to come up with a better understanding. Thank you.
With brief remarks to the with regard to TTIP, and my personal view is that international trade and the trade agreement between Europe and the United States is a major part of our effort to forge and develop rules-based systems. So it's not only about economy, it's about geopolitics and who sets the rules and standards for a global order, and for that TTIP would be absolutely important. But I have to admit, of course, that TTIP is a kind of, this has become a kind of this symbol of all the anti-movements. It's anti-Americanism, and we have newly also not only the traditional left wing, but also right wing anti-Americanism. It's anti-globalization, it's anti-capitalism. So it really attracts all the anti-movements in the West. And so we are on the defensive, but I think we have to fight for it, because it is to develop rules for a world which is otherwise without rules and chaotic, or China is emerging as the rule setter, and this is not our interest. The fragmentation of societies in Europe and the fragmentation and disintegration of countries in the Middle East or in Northern Africa, like Libya, Iraq, Syria, and so on, at first glance there seems to be no common, there seems to be nothing in common with these phenomena of disintegration and fragmentation. I would only identify one, perhaps important, linking element, and this is the emergence of identity policy. Overall, everywhere in the Middle East and in Europe, we have identity policy as a new tool, perhaps also of power policy. And so we have to be very aware of this element of the desire and the yearning for identity in a globalized world is very, very important. The Rome Treaty and the anniversary next year, I think we should make use of this anniversary, not only celebrating the past, but having a view on what Europe has to do in our time to serve the interests of its peoples and of its citizens. And this is what European governments and politicians now really have to do to, in a way, relaunch the European project for the decades before and take a measure on our predecessors.
That's probably a good place to end, just because we've sort of run over time.
Excellent.
I mean, if it's about identity politics, building a European identity would be a great thing. I apologize for not managing my time very well, but I was enjoying myself. We had, to me, a wonderful conversation. I thank the panelists and hope you will all do the same.
Thank you.